All right, my name is Rich Schmidt. We're here with Antonio Verduzco. It's June 21st, 2023, first day of summer. We're here at Soter Vineyards in Carlton. Antonio, thank you so much for joining us today. The first question is, why wine or why vineyards?
Wow, that's a good question. Well, I think growing up, I was raised in a farm, so the vineyard setting is kind of a little bit similar to that, and so I think that's why one of the reasons I feel comfortable, you know, and also I like being outside. I like the hot weather, cold weather, all the seasons. It kind of reminds me of, of where I grew up.
Well, tell us about that. Where did you grow up?
I grew up I was born in Michoacán, in a small village. It's San Miguel del Rio. I grew up with my grandfathers or my grandparents, and they had a farm. So they grew peanuts, and we had cows, we had chickens, pigs, a lot of animals. And so at a young age, he took me with him. So that kind of, he taught me that I needed to work. There was no option, pretty much.
What was the work like?
It was it was a little bit. At the time, I was pretty small, so it was kind of challenging for me. But I would help plant peanuts, so I will help take the cows to have water. We had them in parcels, and so we had to always, every day pretty much take them to get some water to the river, or sometimes we had like a big container where there was water stored there.
So tell me about a little bit later as you grew up. When did you come to Oregon?
When I was 10, I was gonna be 11. My mother decided to, bring all the family here, and so I would say around 11. So yeah.
And what brought the family to Oregon?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think I'm assuming that my mother knew people here, and so it was kind of like one of those things that when you know people, it's like, okay, let's go there, and they help each other, and so I feel like that's why we ended up here.
What were your first impressions?
It was cold. It was cold. I was used to the warm weather, and coming here, it was just kind of like different. It was shocking for me. So, but over time, I think I got used to it. I adapted pretty good.
And what did you do when you got here?
I went to school, middle school, high school, and after that, I went to community college, Michoacán, for a year or so, and I started, when I was going to Michoacán, I started working at a vineyard. I think it was like around 2002, somewhere in there. And I was working part-time. And so for some reason, I felt like I understood the job. I mean, I was used to working out in the fields. I knew that you needed, to work long hours pretty much. But at the time I was working part-time, and I think my first job was putting anchor wires around the vineyard. We were doing some new plantings, so it was interesting. I mean, just because when I saw that we were doing these blocks of vineyards, everything, it was pretty much the same. So it was nice.
You mentioned feeling comfortable in vineyards and feeling like was that true from the start? Did you feel like you could kind of do the work and understand what needed to be done from the start?
Yes, I think just by being raised in the farm, you get those. They teach you how to be good with your hands, understand what you need to do. Or at a young age, I was putting fences or helping out pretty much. So it was kind of, I feel, I'm not going to say normal, but I understood the job.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned starting kind of part-time while you were at Chemeketa. So what kind of came next for you? What point did it become sort of more of your life?
Well, I was working, and I think I was, at the time, the school wasn't my thing. I regret it now, but I mean, at the time, I thought I made the right choice. I got in, working in the vineyard part-time, and, once the summer came, it was more work, and so I started working more, and I was at the time, for me, I was making pretty good money,
Mm-hmm.
and so I was happy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of when I decided that, I think I like working out here.
Mm-hmm.
And so I stayed working for that place for around 6 years.
And where was that?
At the time, the name was, I believe it was Oaks Ranch.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the guy sold it to, I think, Johan's Vineyard. And he separated in a couple parts.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's Johan Vineyard, and it's Lefko Cellars
Mm-hmm.
as well right now at this moment. And I think the middle part, Jack, I think his name is Jack, owns that area.
How did as you worked more hours and as you got more comfortable, how did your responsibilities progress? What were you asked to do?
I think, since I knew a little bit of English at the time and Spanish, and we had a crew that didn't speak a lot of English, so I was kind of like the guy that was helping out. So that's kind of how I started.
Mm-hmm.
And as time passed, I got a little bit more involved, like with, I was driving a tractor, spraying, cutting grass, and just keeping the place maintained.
So what came next for you after that?
After that, I think things changed a little bit. I had some things that I needed to deal with, and so I after 6 years, I think I left that job, and I started working in different jobs, like nurseries and in factories as well, and I always drove around, going from work to home, and I kept seeing a lot of vineyards, and I'm like, oh, it just kind of reminded me when I started. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna see if I probably apply again in a vineyard and see if I can get the job, just so I can reduce my travel time. At the time I was working in Weyerhaeuser. It's by Jefferson, so it was from McMinnville to there. It was kind of like an hour drive, and so I knew a friend in Atlas Vineyard Management Company that is now, and he said, hey, we were hiring tractor drivers. If you want to, if you want to work, just put an application there. And so I did, and I started working there for around 2 or 3 years. And in that process, I think Soter hired them to manage this site, and they told me this, like, hey, do you want to take care of this site? And so I came here, and I looked at it, and it was nice. When I came in, I think I just I saw the land, and I'm like, I can drive here. It's good. So it wasn't too dangerous.
We'll start with before we get to Soter. Excuse me. Let's talk about your time here at Atlas. Obviously, going from kind of working at one vineyard to working for vineyard management, kind of a different step. So tell me about getting used to that, being at different places. Did you enjoy that more, or did you kind of miss the familiarity with one site?
I think I think it was hard working, just because there was a lot of acreage there. And so it was a lot of driving, and I felt like it was always, go time. So you didn't have time to, just enjoy what you did. And I mean, we kept the place pretty good, maintained, but I felt like it was too much. So I think in my mind it was like thinking I need to work it where it's gonna be a vineyard that is gonna be not too big or too small. There's gonna be, in my mind I had like around 40 acres, 30 to 40 acres, and when I landed here, that's pretty much what it was.
So you mentioned this. You liked the site from the beginning. Tell me what it kind of looked like to you as you got started here, as your first time at Soter. What was the vineyard? What was the vineyard like? What did it look like? What needed to be done?
I mean, everything looked good. I think. I mean, it was a big change for me when I landed here at Soter, just because I think they were switching to biodynamic at the time, and so I wasn't used to it, and so it was a big change, and I learned a lot, and I think the person that helped me the most understood the biodynamic farming. It was Nadine, and so it kind of, I had to start all over, just because it's different. It was different what I was used to.
What were the biggest differences from what you learned before to biodynamic farming?
It's more work, meaning like the weeds, you don't spray the weeds, so you have to find, either do it by hand, hoeing, or using a machine that does it. And so at the time when I came here, they purchased this Clement, which is a couple bars that go underneath the ground, and it just kind of cuts the roots of the grass or weeds. And if it doesn't rain, they're supposed to dry. So yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the challenges, that it's more work to maintain the weeds down.
What was your initial role when you were hired here? What were you doing most of the time?
I was tractor operator, so just this was my backyard pretty much, driving in circles all day long.
And how has your role changed?
As the time passed, since I was always in the vineyard and I was always keeping an eye on the vineyard, they decided to put me as a vineyard supervisor. Just there were crews here, and I was pretty much communicating with them as well. I mean, I didn't speak Spanish, so she didn't have a problem with that. But just because I was always driving around, if somebody was going to see something, it was going to be me.
So in that role as vineyard supervisor, how did your kind of day-to-day or week-to-week life change?
It was a little bit more work, just because if I saw something, I had to get off the tractor and go and kind of check and see if what they were doing, or kind of like guide them to the goal that we had in mind. And so it was a little bit more work.
When it comes to sort of supervising or managing, did you feel fairly confident in that role from the start?
Not really. I mean, not really. It was a little bit challenging, just because I was used to just work, just nonstop, and so switching into the supervisor, I had to talk to people, and I had to be careful what I said. I couldn't just be rude, just kind of find the right approach. So it was a little bit challenging.
Was that the biggest challenge for you in the new role?
At the time, yes. Just trying to have the crew happy, and just get the job done that we needed to get done.
What about now? What's your biggest challenge now?
Well, now I think it's looking back, I think it's a little bit better for me, just because we have a bigger team, and so that kind of, it releases a little bit more pressure on me, and that makes me enjoy more what I do. It makes me kind of like, I can walk through the vineyard and just kind of enjoy where I work.
So in that role, then, obviously you've been here long enough now. What are the changes you've seen at Soter? How has this place changed?
Well, we got more acreage. It got a little bit bigger. So So I think it's yeah, definitely got bigger, and I feel like it's growing. I mean, if it's slowly, but it's growing. So I mean, it's one of those things that it's like, what's going to happen next, you know?
When as the vineyard has expanded, have you had what has your role been as the vineyard has grown? Have you had a role in putting down new vines or sort of planning where things are growing?
Yes. Usually, we do some replantings, and we take out some vines that we feel they need to come out, and we replant. And so yeah, I think I like this job. I do a little bit of everything, which is good. It's always fun.
Yeah, take me through that. I'm curious, kind of what a typical day looks like for you.
Well, I mean, depends on the season, but I mean, right now it's just I have water going in some blocks, and I'm doing hedging as well at the same time, and cutting grass. So those are the two activities that I'm doing right now, and also when in the slow season is more kind of, we go back and we replace all what mess that we make, anchors that we need to be replaced, or posts, things like that.
What about during harvest? How does your role change when the grapes are ready?
Well, in harvest, I think it changes a little bit, just because I have, I communicate more with people, with the crew, and right now we have a contractor that is helping us. They're doing a good job, but before that, I was more involved with the people, kind of like directing them, and guiding them which blocks we were going to harvest first, and what changes we were going to make based on what we got from Chris, which he was the one that was making the decisions which blocks we were going to harvest first.
So you talked about how your role kind of changes with the season. What is your favorite time to be out here in the vineyard?
I'm going to say summer or spring. I mean, I think the months I'm going to say is May and June, just because everything is growing so fast. I mean, you can see it. If you don't walk for a few days, you can see the shoots just growing. And so, but at the same time, it's a little bit of a pressure, because I know there's, that's when work starts. You gotta keep going.
So I'm curious, from your role here, how much attention you pay to the industry outside of Soter. Do you pay fairly close attention to Oregon wine, or are you fairly focused on what you do here?
I'm pretty focused just on what I do here. I think I like to live, be simple guy, just kind of day by day. Just kind of I try to learn as much as I can, and I'm always learning new things here. So I'm more focused about this site. I want to do the best I can for this site right now.
You mentioned obviously growth and change here. So what is sort of in the future for this site? What's coming up that you'll be involved in?
Well, I mean, right now there's a spot that needs to be planted, but I think moving forward, just trying to be consistent in what we do. Just take care of our plants and make them, have a good journey in their life cycle.
Is there more expansion on the horizon? More planting?
Well, I mean, I think so. I'm not sure. I think that's a decision that that somebody else is going to make. But yeah, I think we're going to be planting a few more.
And sort of what else is next for you? Are you anything else on your horizon, either at work or in personal life, that you're excited about?
Well, I mean, right now, it's I'm pretty happy doing this. I think this is kind of like my comfort zone, and so my goal is to just work here and spend as much time as I can with my family, and so that's kind of the goal. Just make memories.
If you could, if you could give advice to yourself as you were just entering into the vineyard and wine industry, what would you tell your past self?
I would say probably just invest more time in school, just because I feel like, it's good to just have the knowledge, when before you have family, just because you have the time. So why not make it?
And what are you sort of proudest of, or what do you feel like is your biggest accomplishment so far in your career?
I wish I just keeping my job. Coming back to this place, I think that's what I think. But at the same time, it's being mobile, trying to stay active, and so I can perform the jobs that are required here, and then being healthy. Just trying to keep my body in a way that if I need him, is gonna respond.
All right, that's all the questions that I have for you. Is there anything I didn't ask that I should have? Anything that we didn't cover that you'd like to cover here today?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think I'm good.
Well, excellent. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, sharing your story with us, and taking us through your journey so far. We'll let you off the hook.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
that.